They said I should give it up, like that just ain't good enough.
Hello everybody, Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in with a little special announcement for those who have followed me for any stretch of time. You know, outside of the businesses that I run, like Myriad Business Solutions, the Visionetics Institute, Odyssey Media Group, I also do a great deal of work inside of the inner city communities in Houston, Dallas, and other areas. I'm asking now, as we push a fundraiser, that you support what the Odyssey Project is doing in the inner cities, especially with programs like Black Men Lead, which is a rite of passage initiative, and Restoring Ghetto's Forgotten Daughters, which is a program focused on helping young girls, but boys as well, suffering from childhood sexual abuse, rape, molestation, domestic abuse, absentee fatherhood, and so many other things. The information will be in the box. Thank you.
I'm free to be whoever I want to be. I've been through hell all by myself.
Well, hello, everybody. It's Dr. Rick. This is the Black Voice. I have with me a brother I definitely am inspired by, I admire, and I pay close attention to his narratives because of his unique experience. And that is filmmaker Tony Lindsey, an independent filmmaker. I've had a chance to review a recent project I think was just really off the chain. Tony, first, I'm just going to let you introduce yourself to them. They've seen you before on The Teachers, but it's been a minute, and I want to real quickly acknowledge my ace, my partner, Dr. Michael Blanchard, who is on hiatus. He's on sabbatical right now, dealing with some issues. You guys keep him lifted, and we're going to continue to move forward. I'm going to be doing some things with The Teachers while he's gone, with his blessings. But we both have a tremendous amount of respect for Tony and what he does and what he stands for. And if you guys know me, you know I don't invite yes men on my channel. I didn't bring him here because we agree on everything. I bring him here because he has a critical path to thought, and he is willing to substantiate what he believes based off of his experience and his awareness, and it offers for great dialogue. So Tony, let them know a little bit about yourself and we'll get right into this.
Yeah, peace. Thank you for the invite. I'm Tony Lindsey. I am a filmmaker. I live in Brooklyn, New York. I'm also a single father. I'm a real estate investor and entrepreneur. And I also, I guess, have pretty strong opinions on some stuff. So, I mean, I don't know if you would say I'm an activist, but I am pretty involved in the things that, you know, involve my community. And I do my best to just, you know, try to spread the, you know, positive messages and messages of common sense, you know, hence, you know, I'm actually in the process of setting up my own podcast, and, you know, hopefully you'll come on there, brother, you know, as a guest, one of my first guests.
Anytime.
Yeah, but I appreciate the invite.
Right. So what we're here to talk about today is all the hype right now is around Jonathan Majors being charged with domestic violence because his girlfriend, and we're going to go ahead right off the top, and I think everybody knows by now, his white girlfriend initially accused him of attacking or assaulting her. Fortunately, there were a number of witnesses. There was the driver, and there was also video footage. And the accumulation of all the evidence basically pushed her in a corner where she had to submit a retraction to her charges. And from what I understand, if they're not dropped, they're in the process of being dropped. But the conversation brought on a dynamic that both of us became immediately enamored with, and that is how he's viewed. I have I think a stronger opinion about interracial relationships than Tony does, and I may be wrong, but I know that with me, while I love my brothers and sisters, and I'm not going to dismiss you, disown you, or any of that stuff, I will say that I don't think it's best for us. But at the same time, I'm going to love on my brothers and sisters. And unless someone shows me that they're literally anti-Black empowerment, I'm going to hold you down, because where I may be strong in one area that I hold up, that's definitely going to be the likelihood that there are areas I still need to be stronger in. And I think Brother Malcolm said, remember that you didn't always know what you know. And so I take that. But one of the things that we started to talk about, Tony, was the dynamic in which a lot of these relationships take place, because there's this assumption or postulation that when you see a successful Black man with a white woman, he decided to grab hold of this white woman or pursue a white woman after he became successful. And I did, a video yesterday where I talked about the dynamic of how that normally actually takes place. But you made a and here's the thing: I read your comment on the video yesterday, so I'm going to let you expound on that, because your take on it is that, number one, Hollywood chooses a certain type of male. So elaborate on that first.
Yeah, well, I know the general assumption is that, well, typically by Black women and just the Black community in general, is that when you see successful Black men, once they get into positions of prominence and notoriety and fame, celebrity, wealth, they choose white women and as some sort of trophy. But I think there's a very important point that people are missing, because a lot of these men that were accusing of doing this, they weren't rocking with Black women in the first place. And, it can be for a myriad of reasons. But like, let's just take for an example, Michael B. Jordan, right? Just a couple weeks ago, a month ago, they were talking about how corny he is. He's the corny type of dude. A lot of jokes going around about this guy. Michael B. Jordan represents, to me, like the good guy, the guy that a lot of women really need, but they don't really want. So I think these men that women are accusing of doing that, a lot of them, I mean, some are, maybe they wanted to be with Black women, but I do know that a lot of Black women aren't choosing these guys to begin with. You know what I'm saying? And I also believe that when it comes to Hollywood, there is a certain type of Black man that they're looking for. And it's usually someone who is more, I guess, let's say, integrated into a different cultural norm or a different cultural setting that isn't, so quote unquote Black. They pick the guys that are dating white girls. You know what I'm saying? They pick the dudes that are at those, those wild parties and hanging out in certain circles where there may be excessive drug use or things that are not really typical in our circles. My son, he is in he goes to a performing arts school, and he just started high school. From middle school to high school, it's a big difference. And it's a tremendous culture shock for him. Number one, because he's around a lot of different cultures now. He's around a lot more, white people, Asians, people of different, demographics. But one thing that he always points out to me is that there are certain things that these kids are doing that he couldn't imagine doing based on the way that he was raised. So I just think it could be like a social, a socialized type of difference. I don't know, but I think that once you get into those circles, that's where they pick you from. That's where they choose you from. So it's almost like in order to get into Hollywood, Hollywood knows the type of Black dude that they want.
Right. And so how are you handling that with
Well,
your son?
Well, I try to keep, thank God. I just say, like, man, thank God I am there. Like, I'm a single parent. So I keep my son grounded, because there are a lot of influences that he's subjected to that are really, really scary, and I'm not just talking about drug use. It's just so many things that I know that if I weren't in his life, and also to make him confident in his masculinity as a young black man, I don't know where he would be. And you know, there are so many agendas that are being pushed through Hollywood, and it actually even takes away from the passion that a lot of these young artists, have for the entertainment industry, for their craft. So I just try to keep my son focused on the craft, and I try to keep him, just grounded in who he is, so that even when he gets around these influences, it's all right. He knows what it is, but he won't partake in certain behavior and certain activities because he knows who he is. And that's the most important part. As a young black man, I want my son to know who he is, and never be ashamed of standing in his masculinity as a young man, because there's nothing toxic about masculinity.
Right. So I want to say something on that. Then I'm gonna double back to the other part of that. I think what you're saying is extremely important. I think one of the things that we need to do a better job of is what you're doing. And unfortunately, not every black male has a black father in the home or has a positive black male role model, which is a huge part of how we socialize young black men. Because what you keep saying is knowing who, or what you're saying is you need to have not only an understanding of your general identity, but your racial identity, because in your racial identity is your true self, and the understanding of self, and being okay with your blackness. Because to me, what we have to look at, when I look at this and I see it solely from a racial perspective, to me, it is a lack of understanding of who I am and why I am and what I am, in a sense of, it's easy for me to, if I don't know who I am, if there isn't a level of confidence in me, then I can be convinced that my blackness is a handicap. I can be convinced that my blackness sets me back. I could buy into the black inferiority narrative and think getting something white means I'm better.
Right. And you become apologetic for being
for your blackness. Yeah.
For your blackness. Yes, of course. Absolutely. In this industry, it's all about what do you call that? Code switching. I mean, we all know what code switching is, to a certain degree, everyone has done it. But when it comes to like the entertainment industry, specifically, the movie industry, film industry, there's a lot of code switching that black people feel obligated to do just in order to get their opportunities. And it's unfair. So I don't want to condemn those people so much, but I do empathize. But I think that once we are more unapologetic about who we are, we're actually going to see more doors opening, because it's that uncompromising nature, being that we tend to be the driving force of everything cool and trending anyway in this country, that can truly like create real opportunities for us and draw more people to us, because we're very talented people. And it's just a shame that, especially when it comes to Hollywood, it's like, even when certain black men get in the door, it's like they do it one at a time. They create a space for one or maybe two, and that's it. But if you look at everyone, you see so many people of other demographics who are there. You got Tom Cruise, you got Brad Pitt, you got this one, you got that one. But with black folks, you don't really see too many. I think
they normally stack us. We went through Denzel, and then Samuel L., and then Morgan Freeman has been around forever. I think he's
right.
But you get him. Then Will Smith came in, and then we started coming into the newer age cats.
But we're a quota. Like our talent is treated as a quota,
right?
And that's a problem. That's a major problem.
And so again, I understand your point on sort of being forced to code switch or play a certain narrative or present a certain identity.
Yeah, and compromise, what may be your moral, values.
And so that's one thing. And then I want to go back to a point you made, because someone made a matter of fact, I'll just put it up here. It's a little long, but you can take some time to read it while I speak on it, then you can address it. The notion that some of these guys are the guys that Black women didn't want. And
yeah, I can speak to that. I saw that comment, and I'm not saying that to be, venomous in any way towards Black women, but I think in order to identify a problem, we have to acknowledge that it exists. And as we were talking about earlier, Black women in particular today are very much how do I say this without sounding offensive?
Be careful. Be careful. I don't want to have to order security.
A lot of our Black women are just not interested in men's potential, according to the doctrine of today's relationships. Potential doesn't mean shit. Excuse my French. It don't mean anything. You need to have the car. You got to have the job. You got to be doing this. You have to already be established. And the unfortunate truth is, when you're talking about Black men who happen to be the most marginalized group in this country, that's not going to be something so easily accomplished with every relationship. So while a lot of our women do appreciate men with potential, a hell of a lot of them don't. And they're not making themselves available for these types of men. But guess who is? Becky.
Beck? I talked about this yesterday. See, what we don't understand is there's this idea by Black men. Oh, you still
Don't worry, I'm still here.
Okay. There's this idea by Black men about Black men that we sit up and where was I going with this? Okay, so we're talking about the whole Becky thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're talking about, man, I lost my train of thought totally. When you went Black, you lost me.
Yeah, I'm so sorry about that.
That's okay, but in essence, what were you saying? Because you triggered my thought.
No, I was saying that how basically a lot of our women, they're not really interested in potential. They want the right now. They want it now. If you want to be with me, you got, come on, we've been hearing this throughout history. You got to have a JOB, all of that.
Now I know where I was going. So what happens is there's this idea by Black men that when a woman says, I won't marry potential, I need you to be on your A game. A lot of Black men interpret that as you being opportunistic or being a gold digger. I'm not advocating that idea, but that's a lack of understanding of why the Black woman is where she's at right now, because the Black woman doesn't have the capacity or the space in which, and many times, to say that, because she doesn't have the support mechanisms to catch her if this dude doesn't come through. Now, the flip side of that is Becky, and it's important that we understand how this dynamic works. White men who come from money, who have always had money, are not checking for white women who come from meager beginnings. Right. They tend to want to marry money or prestige. So there's a group of white women that want to get on and get a millionaire that a white millionaire won't give a second look to. So guess what she's aiming at? She's aiming at the Black guy, but she understands that she needs to get in on the ground level. That's the only difference between a Black woman who wants that dude and the white woman is literally conditioned. And it's not just for Black men. White women are conditioned. Right. Look at the potential, go and support the potential. I can't tell you how many cases in my research where I saw white women put their doctor husbands through medical school, their lawyer husbands through law school. He went to school, she went to work. So the first 10 years of the marriage, she worked, but she don't work no more.
Right. And I think also, though, I mean, let's be real. White women have more of a social standing to be able to wait on potential. They have more of a convenience to be able to focus on those types of elements of relationships where, unfortunately, whenever you're dealing with marginalized groups, it's like there's this pressure to get it now.
You got to, because that, again, on average, the average white person is going to be seeded by somebody in their family, the down payment for their first home purchase.
That's right. That's right.
That's not happening in the average Black family. You're going to actually come, if you went to school to get your advantages as far as making yourself marketable in the business world, you're probably $65,000, $75,000, $100,000 in student loan debt. So what does that mean? That means you're starting out $100,000 behind in wealth building.
Of course. Right.
Okay. And then you're going to go out and have to hustle to come up with a down payment for a home and make sure your credit is okay. So you're trying to do all this, and you're finding out that the piece of paper on the wall isn't worth what you've already spent on it. And so now there's all these other things going on. On the flip side, they're getting underwritten. They're getting a head start. That's what generational wealth does. So yes, there is a smaller amount of tolerance or capacity for a Black woman to say, I'm going to marry potential. But here's something that I want to present to the Black women, because that's this idea. Because here's the thing. My research tells me that Black women are the least likely to marry outside of their race. So then what that tells me, you got a lot of single Black women. Yeah. Okay, that's the first thing. The other thing it tells me is your experiences are locked in to only having dealt with Black men. So your understanding of men is limited to the Black experience. Here's what I can tell you. One of the reasons that Black women have given me why they want, because you'll see it, they'll tell you in a heartbeat, I'm not marrying potential. I'm not going, and I get it. If you're in your 30s and 40s, probably not good. But if you're starting out in college and you're looking at him and he's this kid that gets A's in aeronautics, it's probably a chance he's going to do something with that. But not, and obviously everybody looks at the athlete because that's the fastest way to millionaire status, but very few make it. And then I'm going to turn it back over to you. But my thing is, what you have to understand is one of the big fears is the backside of that. I'm going to get with this dude. I'm going to work him and nurture him to a certain standard. He's going to become successful and he's going to dump me for a white woman. Okay. Now here's what I can tell you is, in the research I've done where white women do it with white men, those men still dump the first woman, because the first marriage normally with white people isn't about love. It's about strategic planning, putting yourself in the proper position. Now, remember, I married money. I married the person whose daddy had the connections, who had this and that. And so I played that game. Now we've gotten up. Our kids are grown. I'm in my 40s. I'm going through this transitionary period. I'm moving on to the next thing. And it happens a lot with them. So it's not just a Black male thing. It's a cultural dynamic of how we set up our lives in our past. And so a lot more has to go into understanding that.
Right. But just, you said it there. It's a cultural dynamic. I think the problem is that today we've adopted a different cultural dynamic that is foreign to our own, which is what continues to keep us in a constant state of dysfunction, because we have our Black women they're gauging their relationships by someone else's yardstick. And you have the same with Black men, so you have all of these forces that are basically telling us, this is what you should expect in a Black man. This is what you need to expect in a Black woman. But these are all based upon metrics that unfortunately don't apply to us in the same way. I'm sorry, say it again. Go ahead. What were you saying?
I'm saying that it's a Eurocentric idea, a notion of what is, and so much of how we judge our lives and judge what we should have, what we should do, how we should look, is based off of a Eurocentric notion or a Eurocentric idea of what is, a Eurocentric idea of what's beautiful, a Eurocentric idea of what's intelligent, a Eurocentric idea of what's classy, what's professional. Right. All of these things. We are just not getting to a point where our women can wear their hair natural in the workplace and not be viewed in a negative light. And so many have stood up and said, in order to be accepted in the professional world, I'm going to go do it this way because they won't accept me. And now we're finally gaining ground because, again, more Black women are becoming unapologetic about their beauty, unapologetic about their hair. And you have a look. I want you to speak on what's going through your mind right now.
Right. No. I agree with that when you're saying, more Black women are becoming more apologetic in their presentation and who they are and all of that. I agree with that. But you know, basically you made the point. We're so detached from who we are, you know, by applying other standards to ourselves that we don't know who we are, which is why, you know, I brought up that point earlier when talking about my son. You know, we have a responsibility, especially as Black men, to, you know, instill within our children a very strong sense of who they are, because that is what enables them to function in a society that is constantly at odds with them. And, you know, I just think that if Black men and Black women let go of the external social influences and focus more on who we are as a people and our relationship dynamics, which are completely different from everybody else, you know what I'm saying? I think we would get so much further. I just think we've just become so indoctrinated with all of these different social movements that don't even benefit us, that we're busy fighting for everybody else while not even realizing that many of these movements and these political movements, they always contribute to the destruction of our families, and we just don't see it.
Right.
And who gets scapegoated for it most of the time? Black men. And why? Because we live in an anti-Black misandrist society. And at some point, we're going to have to talk about this. There is a very strong, a very pronounced hatred for Black men in this society. And I'm talking about even more so, I'm heterosexual Black men. So, you know, it's masculinity from Black men is viewed as one of the most dangerous things in this society today. Hence, so many movements to suppress it. You know, so that's why I say it's just very important that we know who we are, and our
Right.
women support us. You know what I'm saying? Because we're getting attacked from all sides here. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And one of the things that I look at when I look at the gender war within the Black community, you mentioned this before we got on, it is a socially engineered construct. It is by design. It is about hyper emphasizing negative behavior. For instance, the truth of the matter is, and this can be statistically validated, that the second leading cause of death for Black females between 15 and 44 is intrapartner violence. The vast majority of that, because Black women tend to choose Black men significantly over any other race, that it's likely going to be a Black partner. What we don't look at when we're measuring that, because it's hard for me, because every Black life to me matters. So whereas on a scientific level, I'm looking for statistical significance. In other words, enough of this happening to say it's a real issue and not an anomaly. Right. Okay. It's a real issue, but the vast majority of Black men aren't those dudes. But you don't get the masculine, unapologetic Black man presented anywhere. So you don't even get to know he exists.
Right.
You don't get to see the Black man who speaks up and stands up for Black women, and that nobody's going to harm a Black woman in his presence. You don't get to see that guy. You do get to see the guy.
These institutions, these media outlets, everything that's feeding us all of this information, this one-sided information. Now,
and I'm going to take this statement that's on the screen to make my next point. It says, unfortunately, many are looking for Black men with white male entitlement. That's not realistic. The question is, does he have the plan and a purpose? So important to understand that. I teach my girls, and I said this yesterday, I teach my girls, my daughters, but I also teach young girls that I'm working in the community with. When you meet a man, don't look at what he drives. Don't look at where he lives. Don't look at where he works. Ask him what his vision is. If he doesn't have a clear plan, a clear purpose, he can't tell you exactly where he's going to be or where he hopes to be in 5 years and how he's going to get there. That's not where you want to be, because the moment he tells you what his plan and his purpose is, you can immediately search yourself to see if you fit. You can also say, is that where I want to be in 5 years? Is he going in a dark? Because a lot of times what happens is a lot of our relationships implode because of unrealistic expectations. Of thinking that this is going to happen in 3 years and when it doesn't, you start looking at each other side eye. But here's the thing. I call it the body in the bag phenomenon. Over the last few years, we got this idea that because a man makes a certain amount of money, he's a high value man. It's so much more to being a high value man than his bank account or the bag. But the problem is, we've dummied down what we need from our women too, because now we've dummied down the man. We've totally commodified black manhood. Can he pay all the bills? First of all, let me tell you, the median income for black men is $44,000. It's not a bunch of black men that can pay all the bills right now. That's an unrealistic expectation. Does he have the potential to reach a point where he can pay all the bills? Can he take his vision, his dreams, his skill set, and his drive?
And are you willing to work with him to do that, which is very important, because we can't divorce from that the fact that black women are the most educated group in this country. They are afforded far more opportunities in employment, business, education than black men. That's just the truth of it. So if you're not willing to be a team with this black man, and you approach this, well, I want him to have exactly what I have or more, or I want him to have this much. It's not a realistic expectation. We can't divorce this from the true systemic issues that exist.
Here's something else to go right along with what you're saying. The black race is the only place where you find that the woman in the race is pretty much equal in income with the man. And now you've got to understand, this is a median income thing. Right. So the median income, 44,000 for men and right at 43,000 for women. And it's 10,000 or more for any other group in difference. So the leverage that another man has in another race to say, you need me.
Right. We don't have
that. Different. And when you commodify him, you don't need him, because I make as much as you are or more in many instances. And the only reason it's even a situation where we are actually earning more is because of situations like the entertainment industry and athletics, where the difference in income between black male athletes and black female athletes is huge.
Right. See,
okay, so if you take that out of the equation, if you take everybody that makes over $1 million out of the equation, they out earn us.
Oh, of course. Right.
Okay. And it's not by accident.
It's not.
Okay.
I mean, the commodification of black men, it's intentional. It's intentional in order to create unrealistic standards that will keep us in a constant state of disunity. That's just what it is. But we need, I think, to get back to the days, and well, when I say like back in the 60s, and it's crazy, like back in Jim Crow era, the 60s, you saw a very strong black family unit where we were all subjected to a certain amount of struggle, and we all had to work together. We all knew we had to do what we had to do together. But nowadays, I don't know, it's just as time has gone by, there have been so many external influences that have driven a wedge in our families. I have a handsome black 23-year-old son who just graduated, has a 6-figure salary, has been raised in a loving, caring environment in a 2-parent household. He has a hard time dating black women because he's not black enough. He likes black women, but white women accept him. So much potential. Just wish our young black women would be more open-minded. You know, I think that's a very important comment. And
that's why I threw it up there. It makes the point you made coming into this. So go ahead and elaborate. Yeah,
it makes a very important point, but I think even more important, we have to stop being offended whenever we're faced with the truth, whenever we're faced with a reality that exists. You know, I said it earlier, in order to deal with a problem, we have to first acknowledge that it exists. You know what I'm saying? This is probably a brilliant young man, has everything going for him. But let's be honest, probably a lot of these women, young ladies, are not checking for him. We know what
I mean. All we have to do is look at the comments of the next to the pictures of a young Michael B. Jordan and a young Jonathan Majors before the bodies, before the cool, and the comments. These are women commenting on it that know what they turned out to be.
Yeah,
but looking at it and saying, "I'm not checking for that. I need a little edge. I need a little this. I need." And my thing is, there's this idea also. There's this idea that if I have a command of the English language and I speak in sentences that are properly structured, that it removes or subtracts away from my blackness because I move a certain way, operate a certain way. If I'm not athletically inclined, some way it subtracts away from my blackness. And the thing is, Master things that don't belong to you. Just don't identify with them. I mastered the English language, but I can also walk into the hood right now where I grew up and kick it and politic with them cats on the level they're on and not miss a beat. And I embrace that because that's where I came from. But it doesn't mean that's the only thing that I can operate in, because I understand they control everything. And if I don't master the things that allows me to get into their spaces, I'll never have access that I can bring things back to my people. So yes, I went and I became educated, but it didn't subtract from me. I'm 100% unapologetically Black. I like I said, I've gone through being an athlete. I've gone through being in an entertainment industry. I've gone through being an entrepreneur. I've had nothing but access to white women, never even touched one. Because in my mind, I've always believed that the best thing I could ever have on my arm is a Black woman. Now, and I got some cats, they not going to marry a white chick, but they'll knock one down. I didn't even want that. I don't want your DNA on me. And it's not a hatred towards them. I get along with them. I have a couple of male white friends that I'm real close with that held me down when nobody else would. But they understand. You still don't trump my Blackness. Now, what I think is important here is, and I'm going to turn it back over to you, is this very thing that we want to do. It's easier for us to be at odds with one another than it is to be at odds with them.
That's right.
We are turned on each other and we're going for the jugular, and we'll watch them do us over and over and over again. And we'll go, well, maybe next time. Maybe. I'm like, how many next times we're going to give them when we won't forget. We got brothers that we're not speaking to, sisters we're not speaking to, best friends we grew up with. We ain't cooking because one thing happened. Now, granted, there's some things you cross you can't get back from. But a lot of this stuff is just, it's easy to turn against somebody that you know or you don't fear can cause you as much discomfort or harm as the next person. It's like they've got us convinced that if we don't fall in line and toe the line and be exactly what they tell us to be, that they're going to make our lives miserable.
Yeah, well, Black people are never afforded the same amount of grace as anyone else. Whenever a Black person makes a misstep or a mistake, they're immediately deemed irredeemable. Even just look at what happened with Jonathan Majors. The moment I heard that he was arrested, I was like, let me just sit back and just be quiet. Let me just wait and see what's going on here. But everybody just started running with their own narratives. Like, and listen, I saw women who I saw specific women who were just a couple of weeks ago, talking about how this guy was the definition of masculinity. And, I guess when those controversial pictures came out with him and Michael B. Jordan, how this is what masculinity is. You guys are this, that, but then the moment an allegation comes out, they're calling him abusive, a woman abuser, all of this stuff, just based upon the word of some white people that put up some tweets. And I think that's such a really good indicator of the brainwash. It also shows how we don't even afford each other any amount of grace. What we're doing is we're mimicking what society does. Because whenever a Black man is accused, he's guilty until proven innocent. And even when he's proven innocent, they'll still take your shit away. I mean, this guy, he did a commercial for the Army. I don't like that, but he did a commercial for the Army. They pull that, I'm hearing there's discussions about pulling him from the Marvel franchise. I mean, bro, this after a mere allegation, and people had already stated that the woman recanted her statement, her allegations, and that there was video evidence. But people are still falling back from the dude. You know what I'm saying? They put so much stock into these two white people who put out some slanderous shit about him on the internet and then privatize their accounts. So now you can't even look at their accounts. But that's enough to just destroy this man's character publicly.
And one of those was a male, a white male.
A white male.
Yeah, that did that. And so obviously there's some significance in that.
But I do want to say one quick thing. With I think we also need to take a look at who is criticizing this man so strongly, because typically, and I can speak from experience as a black man who has very strong opinions, as a black man who is assertive in himself, a black man who knows who he is, I'm often deemed violent for merely being assertive, or having, or I'm combative for having an independent perspective and opinion. So I know what it is for to be labeled as a black man just because you're not falling in line with what everyone else expects of you. So I'm not going to join that lynch mob to go after this brother when I don't even know what happens. And if your reason for piling onto this guy is because he's dating a white woman, I think that's corny. I think that's real corny of you.
You know, like I said, my thing is, I said at the beginning, I am not one that's for the whole interracial thing, but at the same time, I have people I know that I'm close to that are interracially connected. I love them and everything like that, but they know if we get into that conversation, what my stance is, so we stay away from those conversations.
I agree with that as well, but I don't think that's justification.
Yeah. I'm not going, but at the same time, I'm not piling on him. I'm not going to sit up and attack him. You made that choice. Now I tell you what happens when you make that choice that you're going to be with a white woman. There's certain things that you are disqualified from. As far as you can't move out in the point of black leadership and pro-blackness carrying a white woman on your arm. Number two, you can't talk to me after you marry a black woman about black generational wealth, because you just connected your wealth to a white line. A line that leads back into the white community. So those are things you can't do. Am I going to still love you as a brother? Absolutely. Am I still going to love you as a sister? Absolutely. But there are just certain things you don't qualify from when you don't see the totality and the fullness of what it means to be connected wholly. But this thing right here is the fact that a woman, there's a couple of things that I'm going to try to get to real quick. The fact that women are being pushed to education and opportunities over men needs to be addressed. As a doctor, I had to understand this with my husband. We just talked about that. I think it's extremely important that we understand why this is happening. This is happening because I can give as much financial and social fluidity to a woman as I want to in a patriarchal society. But when I create a misandrous reality in that same race, where the men in that race are downcast, emasculated, and unaccepted as a whole, and I can even create a level of vitriol between him and the woman, that race will never go anywhere. I've always said this, that we will only get as elevated as our women can spiritually lift us, and we will only get as far as our men physically lead us. And if we can't come together to accomplish that, we will never be anything close to what we're capable of being, and they understand that. So they will give black women, and what happens is it immediately creates division, because it places us in basically alternative or opposing realities. Now she makes the money, she's become the provider.
Right.
And so now what happens is, I'm sorry because I can't find a good job. And if I go out and try to make it happen, create my own business, I'm a dreamer. And, you know, and if and the thing is, we don't see the connectivity.
Or if you actually happen to succeed in what you're doing, you may be scapegoated as, you know,
this is as the proof that racism doesn't exist and all this stuff that's going on isn't.
Well, not even that. You may sometimes even be scapegoated as the reason for the patriarchy, you know, because black men are often punished for white male patriarchy. So
all the time.
Yeah, so it's kind of like
we're keeping the black woman down. We don't have the power to keep nobody down.
Yeah, I just wish people could understand the level of immense pressure that black men are under in this country and in this society. You know, it's we have so many things that are fighting against us being with our women and our families. And I know it's easy sometimes to just kind of scapegoat it, to say he ain't shit, this guy's a loser. And listen, there are plenty of losers out there. I know that. But I think a lot of us are being painted as something that we're not. And when we try to communicate these things to our women, we go unheard. You know, you can just participate on any post on social media and just say anything that is in the affirmative, speaking about Black men, and you're always going to find people jumping in and piling on to degrade the point. Or if you offer loving criticism to Black women, you're going to get, well, you do it too, or well, what about you? You know, and I just think we're in a place right now where society is telling us that we have differing needs as a community. Black women here, Black men there. You got the LGBT agenda, right? You got the feminist agenda. You got this agenda, that agenda. But then you have the Black woman and Black men agenda, two separate agendas that are presented to you. So I just think everything in this society functions based upon the continued dysfunction of the Black family, from entertainment, the prison system. I mean, if we're willing to just stop for a second, take a look, and have real dialogue with each other, and be willing to humble ourselves, because I think that's the hardest part of engaging in conversation with each other. I hate to get on social media and see all of the fighting going back and forth between Black men and Black women specifically, because I know what it does. And I know the enemy's just sitting there watching it and loving it, because we're contributing to our own demise. And it's just so crazy. All it takes is just for us to listen to each other. And I know sometimes, like, I'm a very strong advocate for the Black community, right? Let's say that. But I'm going to also say that I'm a very, very strong advocate for Black men. And it is not to say that I am not an advocate for Black women, because I am. I have daughters. But what I'm saying is that as a part of a group that is the most unheard group in this society and the most propagandized group in this society, I'm saying to Black women, we need you to hear us, because the enemy. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear you. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's this new camera that I got. The enemy is pointing. They're not just pointing their weapons at me. They're pointing their weapons at you as well. So I just want us to stop jumping on so many other agendas that don't help us, and start focusing on a Black agenda, one that helps us and continues to build our families and raise our children, because that's the most important thing that we have right now is our children, because that's our legacy. That's our future. Right.
And I agree 100%. And there are a couple of comments made by Evie Marie that I want to address real quickly. Then I'm going to turn it over to you, and we can kind of close out this thing. We're moving up on an hour. I don't want to keep you too long. But in the comment she makes right after this, you can go ahead and check it out. You can see it in the field, right?
Yeah. Why do Black men think a Black woman has?
No, not that one. Look over in the chat. The next one she does, where she's talking about, can we rebuild our communities? I think that's something that needs to be touched as well. But actually, on this Evie, where we're talking about, the lady that spoke up, she says her son likes Black women. He's making moves, but they not feeling him. Right. And so it's not a Black man waiting on a Black woman to check for him. It's that when he moves at her and she's like dismissive, or she's looking at him like he corny, or whatever. And so, yeah, he's feeling like, well, I don't have a place. And now let me explain it so women can understand. There are certain things among Black women that differ based on complexion, hair texture, and a bunch of other things, where one Black woman will be accepted in it and another Black woman won't. And imagine that being you and how you feel about that. That's how Black men feel when, because of who he is, how he talks, or what he's focused on doing or becoming, makes him unacceptable or unappealing to Black women. Because again, I guarantee you the average Black woman or the average young Black girl was not checking for young Jonathan Majors or young Michael B. Jordan. I see right. That's not what the physical presentation was. And they probably was goofy as hell. That's where they were. That's how they were thinking. That's not what the average person is checking with. And so it's not about whether he's checking for something. It's about when he sticks his head in there, does it get chopped off? And eventually you start to read the intensity of the crowd. You start to sit up and feel like, I don't belong here.
Yeah, remember that interviewer said they were bullying Michael B. Jordan. Remember? I mean, come on, let's be real.
He brought it. He matter of fact, I'm gonna tell you something. This dude is a millionaire now, one of the most successful dudes in Hollywood. He was still carrying that shit. When he saw Chick, he gave her the business. Why? He's still carrying that shit. And so
this is the psychological impact. This is what people don't understand. You carry these things for life. Listen, colorism. Listen, I'm as dark as can be. You know what I'm saying? I love my complexion now, but I carried this complex about being dark for so much of my younger life. You know, they used to, y'all know out there, the dark, they left you in the oven too long, Choco Bliss and all of this.
I mean, but even think about this. And see, I grew up, both sides of my family from Louisiana, so I caught it from both ends because I'm not light enough to be accepted by the lights, and I'm not dark enough to be accepted by the darks. So I got it from both ends. But there's this thing. Think about it. When your mom got mad at you, one of the negative things she caught with your black ass.
Black ass. Yeah.
And so this is literally ingrained in us. So when we receive it from our own people, it's just a reinforcement. Now, the next question is, and I'm gonna leave it with this, and we'll try to close out. I'm gonna let you close out however you want to. It says, can we rebuild our own communities, industry, and education systems, etc.? We are forced to integrate just so they can control every aspect of our lives, just to keep us divided. Exactly. Now, the thing is, what that looks like, and one of the problems I have, and I'm going to turn it over to you and let you close it out. One of the problems I have is we don't have long-sightedness. We don't have the ability to be heavily invested in the endurance to see the long term. I often say that in order for us to experience true liberation and true power, we're going to need black men who are willing to plant seeds that we may not live long enough to see come to fruition. We're going to have to start some things that change some things by empowering the youngest generation before they are exposed to it and start to get the negative influence of who they are. And then we're going to have to insulate them long enough for what we've planted to set in and take root so that when they get out there, they're not shaking about it. You talked about this at the beginning, the level of identity. One of the biggest parts of Black Man Lead is racial identity, understanding who you are, being good with who you are, not sitting up trying to apologize for it, not sitting up trying to prove to somebody you're not as black as the next person, but to sit up and say, you know what? I'm beautiful in who I am. I'm strong in who I am. But more important, and I want you to kind of touch on all of this, but definitely this, we've got to reestablish the importance of Black masculinity because it's under a full all-out assault. And it started with the coining of the phrase toxic masculinity.
Yep.
And the idea that anything toxic can be associated with masculinity opens up the attack on anything masculine. And if you don't understand how wordplay is done, when I put toxic masculinity together, now anything I don't like about masculinity, I can now associate as being toxic. When in truth, there are some certain things about us and our masculinity that are necessary for us to be good at what we are supposed to be doing. And now I turn it over to you, and you can close it out.
Well, all right, a couple of things. One thing you never hear is the phrase toxic femininity, and there's a reason for that. You know, I think we need to get to a place where we are able to identify what masculinity is, because there's nothing toxic about masculinity. But I believe that when we talk about toxic masculinity, it's one of those things that is covertly aimed at Black men because they are always disproportionately punished or castigated for this toxicity. So let's talk about what masculinity is. I mean, I saw Jonathan Majors. He gave like a little milquetoast response, a little politically correct response, for the industry. But what is masculinity? Has anyone ever stopped to really think about it? What is masculinity? Because my understanding of masculinity is several things. It's the most significant part of masculinity for me is protection. Now, that
Number one.
Yeah, that protection can be fierce it can be ferocious, it can be nurturing, but it is a protection. It is also leadership. You know, we're at a place where all of those important characteristics that are needed to guide our children and our families, they're no longer appreciated. And when you see this moniker attached to masculinity, you're now seeing all the things that benefit you as detrimental to you. So we have to, first of all, abandon that lie. Now, secondly, when we're talking about uh, the last comment you're talking about with building the communities and things like that, let me just tell you right now, the Black community is in a serious state of emergency. As my sis Tamika Mallory always says, we are really, hold on a second. Alexa, stop. Sorry about that. We are in a state of emergency. And I fear that as a Gen Xer, we're the last line of defense, brother, because we've been going through a decades-long social engineering campaign that has been most heavily visited upon us with the newest generation, right? And that's Generation Alpha. That's what comes after Gen Z, right? So we got Generation Alpha, we got Gen Z, we have millennials. Millennials still got some sense. I'm not trying to, be insulting to anybody, but I believe that the last connection that we have to the elders, the baby boomers, which everybody's always trying to demonize, but the last connection that we have to the ages of old when we had real family values, we're the last line of defense for that right now. So
Right.
I think we have a very real responsibility to instill in this younger generation those values before we leave this earth, because there will be no more after us. I'm telling you, we cannot become disconnected from who we are. And we are the last line of defense for that connection. So we have to engage more with these young people. Listen, I see it all the time. We look down on them with judgment, with condemnation. Oh, we don't want to talk to them. Oh, these kids, they no. The situation that we see right now, a lot of that is our fault. A lot of that is based on policies that we voted for. A lot of that is based on things that we just stood by and let happen. So we have a responsibility. And that's where it goes to your point of the forward thinking. We have to develop a sense of forward thinking. We have to think beyond today, beyond next year, beyond 10 years from now. We have to look ahead to the next generations that come after us. And I think it becomes a lot easier when you have children, because as a father of children, everything that I do is for them and everyone that comes after them. We need to build a foundation, and yes, we are capable of building our own institutions. Yes, we are. Our own financial base, we can do it. The problem is that we talk so much, but we don't put things into action. And we also don't trust each other. And guess what? They taught y'all that too. So
Exactly.
we got to get to a place where we start looking at this and we start to see a friend instead of an enemy. We have to start engaging in those uncomfortable conversations that, before they weren't so taboo, but now for some reason, we don't want to have these conversations with each other. But I think all of it is wrapped up in ego, because we live in a grossly egotistical society that tells us that our reality is reality. No, this is fostering a sense of delusion within all of us. So don't subscribe to that. Don't fall for it. Think for yourself and be willing to submit and humble yourself and have those conversations with your own community. Have those conversations with that brother. And the last thing I want to say, as far as our preferences, listen, I got to be attracted to the person that I'm with, right? You're going to get in a relationship, fine. But I think we need to reevaluate the things that we have traditionally found as attractive and appealing, and understand, is it more of a feeling of social obligation, or is it more so that, you know, we're afraid. Step outside of your comfort zone, because I'm telling you, a lot of the good guys out there, a lot of those dudes like Michael B. Jordan and what's this guy, Jonathan Majors, that were playing with the Yu-Gi-Oh cards in high school and they look like they pay their taxes on time. Those are the dudes that you want to be with. You know what I'm saying? My son, you know, he's a young aspiring actor, and he's one of those guys. Handsome kid, brilliant kid. He has a bright future ahead of him. And I just thank God that he knows who he is. And any woman who doesn't want to be with him, guess what? He knows that's her loss. So let's get to a place like that.
Right.
Sorry for talking so long.
No. I think we're going to leave it right there. But something my grandmother told me that really touches to what you talked about the responsibility of us fixing what we broke.
Yeah.
I asked my grandmother one time, my grandfather was the unchallenged head of our house, but he wasn't the boss of the home. He let her run it. But when something had to happen where it had to be a final decision, the final decision was always his.
Yeah.
And one time he made a choice she didn't agree with it, and I could tell it really bothered her. So I went to her and I said, he can't read. He was born in 1909, son of a sharecropper, had a second grade education because he had to leave school, go out in the field and work with dad in order just to put food on the table. But unbelievable wisdom. He worked hard. He made his way, was successful by anybody's standards, but he did it without an academic education. And so I said, if you just go tell him you did it, you know, I'm 9 or 10 years old.
Right.
You go tell him you did it, but do what you think is best. He won't know. He can't read. She said, number one, I said, so why did you? She said, he's my husband. He is my covering. He is my protector. He's not perfect. He's not always right. But you know what he is? He's a man that if he's wrong, he will fix it.
That's right.
She said, that's all I could ever ask, is that the moments that you're wrong, you come back and make it right. We're in that moment right now. And that's the point you were making. We've got to make it right. It's on us.
Yeah.
One final thing. Lay says that there is such things as toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. I completely disagree. There are opposing dynamics. But what we've learned is to take poor behavior and associate it with masculinity.
Right.
True masculinity is protecting. True masculinity is providing. True masculinity is leading. True masculinity is covering. Masculinity in its very, very definition has no room.
Not be toxic.
No, but when you attach, but see what happens when you attach toxicity to it? Any behavior by a man that isn't acceptable becomes toxic masculinity. Eventually, you don't trust masculinity.
That's right.
Same thing with femininity. The true nature of femininity can never be toxic.
Right. Like you're gonna say a child, a toxic child. No, they may be exhibiting behavior that is toxic, but you cannot lump that characterization upon a child.
Because eventually what you'll eventually get is this assumption or postulation that a child by nature is toxic.
Is innately, exactly.
So you have to be very careful about how you allow them to produce, just like black on black crime.
Oh, don't get me started on that, brother. We'll be
right. But what happens is black on black crime, first of all, unless there's some anomaly and phenomenon, what you'll find is 84% of white homicides are committed by white people. You never hear white on white crime. And violence is a proximal occurrence. It normally happens out of passion, and it normally happens around people you're around. So you're normally going to harm people you're around. So black on black crime, in the fact that it's always presented in this unique phenomenon, isn't a reality. Does it mean that blacks aren't harming each other? Absolutely not. It means you got to be very careful of the terminology you accept because of what it will allow your subconscious to create for you. You got a bunch of us that don't trust black people because of that same damn black on black crime thing. And
race is not a prerequisite to crime.
No.
But however, we've become convinced that it is because we've attached race, black, to crime. So now black people are now the determinant factor of crime, just like how toxic masculinity becomes the determinant of masculinity. So I hope that explains it a little bit better for you, Lay.
Right. Man, it was as usual, a pleasure having you on. I'm hoping to have you back. I can't wait to come on your podcast. I know that's going to be lit.
Yeah. I'm still trying to figure out, like how I'm, set. It's the location. That's the issue. But I really want to get started on the podcast, so I might just kind of set it up in here for now, get my camera and lighting together, and then just start shooting, because there's so much I want to talk about. It's going to be probably a lot more aggressive than this conversation. But
I can go there. I can go there.
Okay.
But, I'm about keeping it real, and I think that every environment has a place, but I think that aggression is what's needed, and it's what's being choked out of Black men. The natural aggression to step forward. That's what they want.
And it's assertion. I won't even say aggression. I'll say be more assertive. Yeah.
But that's what they want. They don't want the assertive Black man that's going to sit up and say, "Not on my watch."
Right.
And so what do? They basically create this negative idea of an assertive Black man. He's aggressive. And even now in your terminology, without even thinking, you use the term aggression because that's how it's being applied. Me naturally being a man. Now, a white man does it. He is so assertive.
Exactly.
Exactly. And so those are the things that we have to look at and understand. So,
man, a re-examination of how we view each other and how we view the things that we've typically viewed one way. Because if we really take the time to slow down and just think about it, we'll probably realize there's so much power in language, man, in words, man. We don't even realize it. We don't even realize it. And the media knows it, and they take advantage of it all the time. So, I appreciate you, brother, for, doing what you're doing. I think we have a responsibility always to continue to dispel these harmful narratives and expose the truth whenever we can, and foster, dialogue. I really want us to engage in real productive dialogue, especially between Black men and Black women, and just understand that whenever we tell you that you're doing something that's bothering us, it's not that we're pointing a finger at you. We're just telling you that this is how something you have done makes me feel. What can we do to try to communicate in order to make things better for both of us? That's all it is. It's communication. There is no progress without communication.
None. So on that note, look, we're going to get ready to get out here. Thank everybody for stopping in. And hold on, Tony. Tony, I'm going to get right back to you soon. All right.
They said I should give it up, like that just ain't good enough.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Rick Wallace here, dropping in with a little special announcement for those who have followed me for any stretch of time. Outside of the businesses that I run, like Myriad Business Solutions, the Visionetics Institute, Odyssey Media Group, I also do a great deal of work inside of the inner city communities in Houston, Dallas, and other areas. I'm asking now, as we push a fundraiser, that you support what the Odyssey Project is doing in the inner cities, especially with programs like Black Men Lead, which is a rite of passage initiative, and Restoring Ghetto's Forgotten Daughters, which is a program focused on helping young girls, but boys as well, suffering from childhood sexual abuse, rape, molestation, domestic abuse, absentee fatherhood, and so many other things. The information will be in the box. Thank you.
I'm free to be